Hi there, CJ Jenkins from Century 21 Cornerstone in Auburn, California. And we're right on the border of Auburn and Grass Valley. And today we're in Grass Valley, and I want to welcome you to our Lake of the Pines Living Facebook. Our Explore today is going to be of raw land. So we're outside the community of Lake of the Pines, and what most people who travel to Lake of the Pines, maybe from the city, they feel that Lake of the Pines is like the country. But if you go from Lake of the Pines that feels like the country to the city dwellers, and you go to the country outside the gate, then Lake of the Pines feels like the city, if you get that meaning. Anyway, I do about a third of my business outside the gate. Now, it's very common for people who are coming from the city to say, I just want 1 acre. Well, our parcels are divided up, really are zoned in usually 5, 10, and 20 acre parcels in Nevada County, Grass Valley, Nevada City, in those areas. So parceling off 1 acre is not something that is customarily done because there's zoning for certain kinds of acreage. So we are today in Grass Valley. I'm not going to mention an address to you, but we are on raw land in Grass Valley on a 5 acre parcel. So when I woke up this morning, I said, oh my gosh, do I have enough to talk about country property for today's show? And I just pulled out a piece of scratch paper and my Sharpie, and this became my list. These are the items we're going to discuss in order to buy raw land and the benefits of raw land and the costs of developing raw land. So there is plenty to discuss. Now, the infrastructure on raw land is the issue, and that's where a lot of the cost is. Not only do you need to get your corners marked and surveyed, which is about $350, $400, you also have to make sure that, let's think about this, that you can flush the toilet, you can turn on the tap, you can drive up to your garage, and you can irrigate your property. So some of the land has NID, Nevada Irrigation District water. It's irrigation water that is pumped, or if you have a canal that has the NID water, that is allotted to a lot of the land here. If the land that you're looking at has NID, that is a major feather in your cap. Actually, it's a peacock feather. It's that big. Now, NID is allotted to land, and it gets measured in miner's inches. And if you have a half a miner's inch, that is still a fine amount of water for irrigation. And you would be paying for that allotment of water from April to October. And that's about $300, $400 for you to be able to have access to irrigate your property. Now, why is that important? Because you don't know how many gallons per minute your well has. So if you have raw land, that means that you do not have any development on it. You do not have your well developed, or your septic, or some of the other infrastructure that we're going to talk about today. So drilling a well. Drilling a well depends really on the cost, depending upon how deep the well is. And a well driller will know certain areas of the topography. For example, this particular area here, I'm going to show you a big rock outcropping. Oh, these rocks are so beautiful. But one of the things that it might indicate is that there's a lot more granite below the surface. And if there's a lot of granite boulders underneath this dirt, maybe drilling a well might be difficult in that way. So gallons per minute is really important. You need 3 gallons per minute for a regular household. I have a well that just got drawn just a few days ago, and that well was drawn, and it was 16 gallons per minute. So that was quite exciting, 16 gallons per minute. Now, The other thing about wells being drawn is that you will need the motors for your well, you will need a well house, and you'll need a way for the water to get from the well house, where the well is, to where your house is. So when you drive in the country sometimes, you'll see the well houses closer to the road than up higher up where the house is. And that well house is easy for the driller to do the well close to the road because their equipment can get there, but then the water needs to be pumped up to wherever your house is. Now here's another simple thing, is that on this property right here, I have a feeling of where the house might be built and where the building site is. But you also have to think that you need to bring in a grader and somebody to actually do your driveway. So if I were to purchase this land, which is about $200,000 for 5 acres, I would have to bring in a driveway in order for my construction to happen. And that would be about $12,000 to $13,000 to put a driveway in on this property. Of course, it depends how far up you go on the acreage and how the topography works. So we have talked about the well, and we've also talked about putting in a driveway. I'm coming back. Now the other important thing is what happens when you need to flush the toilet. You need a septic. System put in. And that's called a test. That test is called a perk in mantle. And that's where a soils engineer comes and tests how easily the water travels through your hillside. And what happens there is they're testing it for a leach field. And if you can put a leach field in, so a septic system has a tank. That tank may be 1,000 gallons, 1,500 gallons, 1,200 gallons. So you've got the tank itself. And then that tank has a motor, and out of that tank, it is motorized to pump the poop out of this septic tank into a leach field. Now, if you were building here, the leach field would most likely be down the hill from the house. Now, when you do have a leach field, which is very functional for a standard septic system, that when you have a leach field, the leach field is designed to be a certain size. And it really functions quite well. For example, if you have a 2-bedroom septic, or 3-bedroom septic, or 4-bedroom septic, that is usually determined by the size of your tank and the expanse of your leach field. To put in a septic system on a property, it could be $30,000 to put in your septic system to be able to flush the toilet. Now, wherever your leach field is, you can't build a pool there. You can't have a structure over it. It should not be the pasture where you have your horses with their great mass pounding the earth with your leach field underneath. So the placement of the leach field is really important when you design your home on raw land. And now, most of the older homes have standard septic systems. But today, because of the EPA and other government guidelines, it is much more strict to be able to put in a septic system, and also more costly. There is one system called a hoot, and the hoot system, last time I checked, was $40,000. And it's an engineered system for basically flushing your toilet. So years ago, I had someone ask me, you know, I just want a piece of land, and I just want 5 acres, and I want it to be flat, and I want to bring in a manufactured home. So they were checking the costs of manufactured homes. By the way, there are 9 different manufactured home providers in the state of California that are approved by the state building guidelines. And some of them are fancier than others. And in order for that manufactured home to be brought in on a level lot. Now you can see with this topography here, this is not a location for a manufactured home. Imagine bringing half of a home up this hillside and then another half of the home up this hillside with big trucks. This would be very difficult to do. And the cost to set up the manufactured home on raw land was at least $75,000. And that was many years ago when I got that bid. And that's doing your well, your septic, your driveway, and how about this? PG&E. So we also, when we look at land, we look to see if there's power to the property. Now, if there are telephone poles that have PG&E on them, like this property has already, which is a good sign, you still have to have your PG&E hookups as part of the cost of connecting your home to that. Now, we haven't even talked about the home itself, or getting permits, or getting an architect, or the costs of building certain size homes. One of the areas I'm very curious about is the small home concept, the tiny homes. I think that would be very interesting as something for us to explore. What is the cost of a tiny home, price per square foot, and how functional is it? And when you see those shows on TV, I don't think there's enough discussed about the infrastructure of the house itself. It's more, this is the cute little house. So I'm very curious about the costs of bringing a tiny home in here. But there is that romantic idea that I'm going to buy my 5 acres and I'm just going to bring my pickup truck with my trailer behind and just live in the woods. Well, you still have to have water, you still have to flush the toilet, and you still need power. So these are the things that would be added to that. Now, in Nevada County, you can build an additional dwelling unit. It's called an ADU. And an ADU, in order to get credit for it, if you were selling your house, you would have to get it permitted. And Placer County and Nevada County have ADUs that are approved. Of course, they're checked to see if the septic system can support another bedroom and another structure. And of course, the well has to be shared between these 2 units, the main house and the granny unit. We call it a granny just as a basic statement, but it's really an additional dwelling unit. They can be on a 5-acre parcel, either 1,100 square feet or 1,200 square feet, and that would be approved by the county. Now, one of the things that you can do on your acreage is you can build a barn. You can build an RV storage, your chicken coop. You can have lots of sheds built. Those things, if they're done without a permit, are extras for the property, but they're also not permitted by the county. And if they're not permitted, when you go to sell your home, they won't have the same top value that they could if they went through permits. So let's walk up here a little bit. So we have some more rock outcroppings here, which are really pretty. Now, one of the things we haven't discussed is because we're on a hillside here, you can see all the rock outcroppings. And with those rocks and a hillside, there's something that you're going to spend some money on, and that is drainage. You're going to want to make sure that you got your French drains lined up, that you get a geologist out here to help you look at the drainage that your drainage needs, because you don't want to build a house that is going to have lots of water underneath. So drilling a well will be at least $7,000. I don't think I mentioned that. And let me see what else I have on my list that came to my head earlier. I think we've covered most things. Now, the other things that you have as an expense on your land is the clearing of your trees. You're going to have to build a house where you can actually have it cleared. So having your tree cutting for a build is definitely important, and also get those trees out for your driveway. Now, if you are heavily treed, which is pretty customary in Grass Valley and in Nevada City, you're going to have the trees away from your structure in order to get homeowners insurance. Homeowners insurance has a lot to do with, one, do you have a defensible space around your structure? But the other thing is that is your road that you live on accessible to a fire truck? And can a fire engine come and take care of a fire that's on your property? Is there a turnaround location? Lots of people who build in the country actually build circular driveways. So the fire truck can come up the driveway and they can circle their equipment around if they have to fight a fire on your property. So the other thing is, besides checking out what fire insurance and homeowners insurance will be on a wooded 5-acre parcel or 10 or 20-acre parcel, is how far are you away from a manned fire station? This particular property is 3 minutes away from a manned fire station. It's completely quiet and peaceful, and you have country so close to where there's a grocery store, there's a post office, there's Starbucks, there's a manned fire station, there's a florist shop and Ace Hardware, and the schools. This is 5 minutes away from the local schools. So these things add value to raw land, is the location of where it is and how accessible it is to the basic needs that we have on a daily basis in that way. And the other thing is that besides being close to items and being by a manned fire department, is internet. Can you get internet services on this beautiful piece of land? Can you work from home? Can your kids do their homework on their laptops after school because you have high-speed internet? And that's always something that should be questioned about purchasing raw land, is what are the internet providers in this particular area? And last but not least, is cell phone coverage. Years ago, when I would be on the realtor tours, when I would go to the country properties, when we had brand new properties, this is before COVID, I would pull out my cell phone at every house. And I would say, how many bars do I have on my cell phone here? And there's actually an area that just has had towers put in, but they would have these beautiful homes in Auburn, but they had terrible cell phone reception. So I would never show those properties to my buyers, because they would be teased. They would find a house and the land that they liked, but they couldn't work from home. And they were pricier homes, and those are people who might be able to work from home and need to be connected internet-wise at that time, and that wasn't going to be doable for them. So I always check how many bars I have on my cell phone when I'm out in the country. Some providers are better than others. AT&T might be a certain area that you're looking, or Verizon. Verizon seems to work the best for me in the country here in Grass Valley, but we could go a couple miles away and that might not be the case. So internet services, how close you are to fire departments, high-speed, cell phone reception. These are all things to explore when you look at raw land. So, how much would it cost to build a home here? Well, you have the price per square foot of the home itself, but you can't shortchange the amount that the infrastructure is going to be added to your bill for building in a beautiful, peaceful place like this. So, I hope this has been helpful for you. I know it's very romantic to think about buying 5 acres and just having your piece of land. However, there's so many things to think about before you make that jump into purchasing a raw land. But if you have any questions about building in Grass Valley or Nevada City, or in Nevada County or Placer County, give me a call. I'm CJ Jenkins from Century 21 Cornerstone. My number is 530-906-4715. I'd be happy to help you find some of the answers that you might need if you're really considering building on raw land. Bye-bye.